Hi, this fireside chat is called An Invincible Inbound Supply Chain. It's how Orvis used order tracking to eliminate stockouts. And we are joined by Wendy Ripley, a global trade manager at Orvis, and Trip Mathew, who is a strategic solutions director of order visibility at FourKites. And I am Steve Banker. I'm a contributor to Forbes.com and Director of Supply Chain Services at ARC Advisory Group. Well, let's jump right into this, Wendy. Can you tell us a little bit about who Orvis is?
Sure. Orvis was founded in 1856 by Charles F. Orvis. He designed and manufactured fly rods in Manchester, Vermont. And he also sold the fly rods and fishing gear out of a small shop in Manchester, Vermont. And in 1965, Lee H. Perkins purchased the Orvis company. And since then, the company has grown to 80 retail stores around the U.S., e-commerce, and a network of 400 dealers worldwide. And today, our president is Simon Perkins, who is a third-generation Perkins running the business. Orvis commits 5% of his pre-tax profits each year to ensuring the sustainability, future of fly fishing, shooting, and the natural world for future generations, and is also involved with supporting the Everglades restorations and the Alaska Bristol Bay initiatives.
Fabulous.
Yes.
And Trip, for you, tell us a little bit about FourKites and a little bit about the order visibility solution we're going to be talking about today.
That sounds great. So FourKites, we've been around for a little bit. In fact, we are one of the first visibility providers that kind of define the space that is now known as real-time transportation visibility. I started at FourKites back in 2017, and at the time, all the other providers that did any sort of visibility, it was all around hot load tracking or individual load tracking. FourKites kind of brought to the market what it would be to track all shipments, and so our customers could manage by exceptions. Today, we've expanded, our suite of offerings. We do provide that kind of visibility layer across the transportation and supply chain, starting from an order creation all the way up to final delivery, through yard management, through asset tracking, as well as just across the board tracking of all shipments, orders, etc. for our customers, so they can manage by exceptions, especially through major disruptions, being able to be ahead of any issues that could happen and secure the supply chain.
Beautiful. And Wendy, can we go a little bit deeper on the Orvis supply chain, particularly around products, number of orders a year, those kind of details, if you have them off the top of your head?
Okay. So we have sort of a broad supplier base. We have direct to factory. We have suppliers that we work with that are also importers themselves. So we actually are moving inventory into our DC from many different shipping points and across various carriers in the USA, and ocean carriers and air freight carriers. Number of orders, massive number of orders, yes. Okay. Across different business units and categories that we design and sell. Okay.
And you were on a journey to improve order visibility. Sort of give me the impetus, what caused you to want to go on this journey?
Yeah, so prior to working with FourKites, we tracked all of our inbound orders and inventory, which is a company's largest assets, manually through spreadsheets. And the data that we are adding to a spreadsheet was data that we collected from our freight forwarders or our domestic truck carriers. And we added that data onto a spreadsheet that we communicated what the arrival time was into our DC by purchase order level, across different departments within our company: inventory, fulfillment, retail, replenishment, planners. So we were tracking manually, and we had the vision and the goal to look for a solution that provide us real live tracking across all modes that different departments within the company would find user friendly and be able to use on a daily basis to make them as efficient as possible and know at any time where their orders were in transit.
Yeah. And how many folks were involved in this manual process of getting that data down?
There was a group of 3 people actually managing that manual data, and it was sort of like a weekly report. So then things change daily, so it wasn't as accurate as we would have liked it to been.
It couldn't be.
So
there's just no way.
It was very cumbersome and time consuming. There was a lot of labor that went into it, and then there was ongoing redos to make sure that we were keeping ahead of whatever changes were happening in the supply chain.
Can you give me a sense of when you went out to the market and were looking for technology to improve your visibility, and how you ended up choosing FourKites?
So we did meet with various transportation visibility companies offering software. We were looking for a standalone provider that would have live tracking, both from a logistics standpoint and from an order standpoint. Meaning we wanted to have visibility if we wanted to, the logistics group is very familiar with logistics data. So they near into the logistics part of a transportation system. And the inventory group, they're not logistics people. They're all about orders, purchase orders, vendor data, ETAs, and things like that in order to keep our mainframe system updates as accurate as possible. So, like I said, we demoed and met with various companies, and FourKites rose to the top for us. Their vision, their ease of use. We felt the implementation timeframe would satisfy our goals, and they worked right along with us through the whole process. So we're really pleased with that.
When did the selection occur? When did the implementation begin?
Yeah. So the selection began in 2021 in the spring.
Yeah.
And which was a good time for us. It wasn't during a peak season, fourth quarter holiday time frame. So it was spring 2021, and we worked with FourKites engineering group and implementation management through the summer, and into the early fall, we started seeing good data on the platform. Not all of our data, but a good majority of it. And then we spent time internally here just making sure the data was accurate and that we had a good comfort level that what we were seeing was true. We would do our own audits against the data that we were seeing that FourKites was displaying for us.
And the implementation took
probably 6 to 8 months, maybe 9. If you add in the auditing part and getting a good comfort level of the data that we were seeing. And at the time too, FourKites was also upgrading some of their order level detail to enhance and give the customers a better visibility and different filter options to make us as efficient as possible. So we had that going on too.
And what would you say was the hardest part of the implementation? What was most difficult? What was the biggest challenge?
I think the biggest challenge for us was getting our carrier partners to have the same priority in the implementation as us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
it took a little while, and we had to set SOPs to ensure, our carriers were actually entering the right data into their mainframe systems in order that the data would be pushed to our FourKites platform. I would say that was probably the most difficult, the back and forth with the communications and things like that. Some of the carriers that we use were also already FourKites carriers. So it did seem to help, but we had to set up our own SOP and our own expectations and things like that to make sure that we were getting the data that we needed for visibility from them.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Trip,
add,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead, please.
I was just going to add that context to that complexity that Wendy mentioned. So Orvis has a unique, but something that we actually see across, ocean, international, inbound supply chain for a lot of customers, that though they may have a robust TMS or transportation, management or planning for the outbound legs, many a times the inbound is managed or controlled by the freight forwarders, where they are the ones who are doing the transportation planning and creating shipments. So they're combining multiple orders for a specific country. In the case of Orvis, they use specific freight forwarders depending on the origin of the vendors. And so what is unique is the shipment data for what we're going to track, the actual logistics leg data, comes from the freight forwarder. So there's that dependency to get that level of granular detail, whereas the actual order data, which truly matters for Orvis and the inventory team, that comes from Orvis. They tell us, what are the orders that they have placed with their vendors, and the transportation closer to the date. For instance, now Wendy tells me that they've already created all the orders for 2025, and then closer to when, very cool. It's very forward planning. And when the production, facilities, the vendors, they start getting all the stuff ready, and closer to when the shipment or the items are ready to be shipped, they reach out to the freight forwarders to then do the transportation planning. The freight forwarders combine different orders from different vendors and then put that into one container, and that's when the shipment is created. So to get that level of integration with the freight forwarders, not just tracking level details, but to know exactly what is inside that container, which would then matter for Orvis. So that is the slight level of kind of complexity that FourKites is able to take on for our customers. So they get the data in the way they want to see it, and they can go down to the granularities within the shipment side on what is in there, but still see risks and impacts against the orders, which kind of are more important to the inventory planners.
Right. So some technological complexity, which FourKites handles, but a big piece of this is getting the partners engaged in this process. Any advice from either you, Wendy, or you, Trip, on how to make that process go better? Because it does not sound like an easy process.
I guess just to make sure that your carrier base and your partnerships with them is strong, so that they'll make sure that they're investing the time to work along with you to help with the implementation and to keep it ongoing. I would say that's my suggestion.
So I think a big drive for FourKites is the willingness for the partners to participate and kind of work in a timely fashion. That drive comes from that partnership between our customer and the carrier or the freight forwarder. But one thing that FourKites does uniquely is what we try to do, especially with one of the main drivers for creating order visibility, is that when these third-party freight forwarders or 3PLs are partners, they have a ton of information, and they might store that information, in specific ways for different customers. But we try to standardize that integration with our freight forwarder. And so what is cool is that information on the order side of things is just the way the customer wants to see it, the way Orvis wants to see it. But the integration that we do with our freight forwarder partners, we make that so it's repeatable for all the future customers. So this is not a hard and complicated process for them to keep doing for every customer that we bring on. So we want that to be kind of something that is repeatable, reusable for across the board. And, Orvis, in this case, we were earlier on in the journey with Orvis, and they helped us kind of build out the product. So, we were just getting started at the time in 2021 with kind of doing those more robust integrations. But the kind of time that we took to build those, our customers now kind of enjoy the fruits of that labor, because a lot of those integrations are basically designed well, so we can reuse that and add more customers with those freight forwarders.
You don't want to tell. People like to do things the way they have done things. They don't want to do things in new ways, and you don't want to tell somebody you've been working with perhaps for years that if you don't do this, we're going to fire you, and we'll start working with someone else. It might have to get there at some point. Did you have your transportation procurement people involved in these discussions with the carriers? How often did you have to communicate? Change is hard.
We really didn't have that much difficulty.
Oh, wow.
So we sort of have I'll call it sort of a narrow base, carrier base. We work with a few freight forwarders, and we've worked with them for a number of years. And then on the domestic trucking, we work with a 3PL. And if they couldn't give us the data and with the carrier of choice's system help, then they would supply the data to FourKites too. So it just worked for us.
Okay.
So yeah, we didn't have difficulty. It was just getting the time to get it mapped out and all of that into everybody's schedules. I would say it was the biggest challenge, right? Because we were very eager to get this moving before peak shipping time frame, and so that we could really take advantage of the FourKites system as soon as possible. So they did really work well with us. It's just that I wish it would have taken a little less time, but we all have other responsibilities going on. This isn't just my own responsibility here at Orvis. Yeah, there's other things going on that I'm responsible for as well. So it was just, another project. I was hoping that we could get off the ground as soon as possible and start getting the rewards from it.
Yeah, so it sounds like to me, Wendy, you have only a few significant partners, and your business really matters to them. And so the fact that you were working with fewer partners and this mattered to them perhaps made it easier than it would be for someone that's dealing with dozens or even hundreds of transportation partners.
Correct. I would say.
So, Wendy, perhaps we could talk a little bit about the benefits you got from order visibility.
Mm-hmm. We've seen a big efficiency gain by using FourKites. We are not doing all those manual reports anymore, so there's labor savings there. Within our inventory group, with the ability to filter within FourKites, they're able to just look at their own business unit category orders in order to see where they are in the supply chain, and then take action as needed based on the data it's giving to them for estimated arrival to our DCs in order to update our mainframe systems. So we did see a monetary savings in labor and efficiencies there. We're also able to, since we're sending all of our purchase order data into the FourKites platform, like Trip mentioned, our orders out there for 2025, we're able to take the order data within FourKites and pull down reports to show us which orders we have coming out of certain origins and by vendor, and be proactive with our suppliers to begin following up if orders are on time, if they're making their bookings on time, where we want to consolidate multiple factories so that the shipments are moving at the same time for port of load to save costs of transportation. That is another big benefit that we've seen from the platform, having all of our orders within one system across all of our vendors. So we've seen benefits that way, both monetarily, in efficiencies, and in cost of product savings.
Beautiful. And Trip, when you think about this, are there other benefits that maybe other customers could get as well?
Absolutely. And I think even for Orvis, one of the drivers, that predictability for customer service, right? So that is the biggest driver for most of our customers, is to be on time, to be able to deliver on time and in full to their customers. In Orvis's case, both to their stores, to their, their partners, as well as direct to consumer that orders from the website, being able to have the goods to be able to sell. So I know that is a big driver. Another huge one, and Wendy slightly mentioned it, is especially when it comes to when you have a freight forwarder, third party manage that transportation leg, without having both that order level as well as shipment level visibility. Sometimes any sort of visibility starts at the port of loading, and at that point, it's too late. You can't change anything. You can't change your route. You can just prepare to receive it, but however late it's getting there, you can only prepare to receive it when it gets there. But to get ahead of that, to know if there are any issues with production, to know whether there are issues where maybe the vendor is ready to send 9 out of 10 items, right? But that so they're kind of waiting or delaying some of those details, but you can get ahead of that and have that meaningful conversation. But maybe 5 of those items that are ready are critical to get here in a timely fashion, to be able to have that conversation, to send the SKUs that are important and track those hot SKUs so you can keep a closer eye. That's huge. And a little bit more timely is kind of the disruptions that we are seeing, whether it was the port strike that happened or with weather catastrophes that are happening, being able to see which orders are at risk. And a big one for our customers is saying, okay, I know that 20 of my containers are stuck at a port or whatever that may be, or stuck somewhere. What is the impact? How can I know which one is going to impact my, outbound, or, now that the strike is ended, I have limited capacity to pull a specific number of containers. Which one should I pull? Because which one has the more important, more kind of, maybe it's going to cause a production, impact, or it's going to, we have a lot of customer orders, we're going to have a stock out. Being able to focus and prioritize the orders that are more important to you. That's a huge kind of driver for our customers. One of our customers, that was pretty much what it was, is they had a snowstorm and a bunch of shipments were stuck. And when the CEO asked the question of like, what is the impact? Like, what are we looking at? What is this impacting? It took them weeks to collect the data of like, hey, what is in those trucks or containers, and what does that affect from, for a customer standpoint or a production standpoint. That is kind of huge, and it is available at our customers' fingertips, with combining that order and shipment visibility with risks that we associate at an order and SKU level.
Does that resonate with you, Wendy?
Yeah, good point, Trip, to call that out, because during the port strike, we are able to see exactly what containers were going to be affected well in advance. And we were communicating that out to other partners within the company for their knowledge and for any proactive measures they needed to take around those items within those shipments. And then we are able to prioritize, once the containers were allowed into the States, which ones we wanted our drayage company to pull first based on priority. and then deliver into our DC, because all the trucks couldn't get in all at once, right? Appointments were filling up. So we had to prioritize which ones we needed them to do first. And FourKites platform allowed us to do that much easier than we've ever been able to do that.
And Wendy, you know, if there are people listening in and they're contemplating on going on an order visibility journey, is there any advice that we haven't talked about, anything that you would like to emphasize that they should really be focused on?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, you know, a company's inventory is their largest asset, and investing in a platform that allows you to see where your orders are any given time across any mode of transportation is a big benefit to the company to know where that largest asset is. Early on, you know, during your mapping out the implementation, I would probably suggest that whatever order detail you decide to send to the FourKites platform from your ordering system, that you take into account any data elements that you might not at the current time be thinking about. So any data of your orders in the future, you might want to be able to filter around or prioritize. So I would just not limit yourself to your thinking for that time period, but think about the future too. Where you foresee being able to take your own order visibility in the platform to make it much easier for your associates in the company to use that data to ultimately benefit your customers.
And Trip, anything to add to that? You know, around the depth of visibility and maybe having better visibility, you know, 6 months from now than you have now?
Absolutely. I want to double down on what Wendy said. It's like not to limit your imagination of what you could do with something like this now. Because you know, what Wendy mentioned is in terms of mapping, we are able to consume all levels of like hierarchy of the product, of the SKUs, and to be able to get very granular, you know, value of the SKU, value of the product, all the details that you can get, because there's a lot you can do with order visibility. It's almost like a foundational element that lets you kind of go multiple levels. So some of the things that, you know, future looking for Orvis, but that we look at is if we are tracking that inbound orders and also looking at outbound, we can show direct impact of, hey, how does specific inbound delays or this, how could they impact the outbound orders or demand you have kind of planned for, right? So now sometimes our customers will say, okay, I'm looking at my data and 60% of my shipments are running late. What do I focus on? What do I try to recover? FourKites can do that with being able to kind of look at all of that. So when you think about, you know, limiting just to some elements of that inbound at a later stage, this could do a lot more. And then again, with AI, there are very cool things that FourKites is kind of building towards. Wendy talked about one partner, which is your, you know, transportation partner, but how can you get more data from your vendors or, you know, pull more data from maybe some of the documentation they already provide, like commercial invoices or things like that. So we are using technology to kind of go further and get more data for our customers that they can use to then, you know, look at risks associated with, you know, from the time of order creation to delivery, but also look at risks across their supply chain. Does this impact a production, or does this impact their demand or supply or customer base for outbound? So looking at it kind of across the way. Another cool variable to think about is, you know, when you combine that with you know, your yard operations and your warehouse operations, you know, that data can power a lot of different things and a lot of efficiencies across there. So just kind of as you go towards implementation, something as foundational as orders can go many ways, and it actually directly impacts, you know, the company goals across many different things. Maybe it is, do we want to reduce the amount of safety stock, or you know, increase our customer fulfillment rates? But all this, you know, we need to have that data. So as you go through implementation, just having that breadth like helps our customers hit a lot of different goals that the company might have.
So Trip, one of the things that you brought up that's interesting is, you know, in the future, you want to bring more AI to bear in your solution. It sounds like more large language model style AI to the solution as well. Wendy, when you think about where you go from now, do you have next steps in mind as well?
Yeah, we have some initial next steps to look at our outbound to retail stores visibility. As Trip had mentioned, maybe how it affects the inbound affecting the outbound to the stores is one thing that we're looking at for next year. And also looking further up the supply chain, maybe more at the factory level. Right now, our visibility starts at the forwarders level, but if we could take that a step further into the supply chain, maybe at the factory level, and somehow integrate some of those communications so that we get, you know, 2-3 weeks further look into the supply chain of what's happening, especially with the markets the way they have been over the last few years. We feel like there would be a great benefit.
So I know the questions I wanted to ask, and they may not have been what you thought you were going to talk about. So, Trip, you know, any final thoughts? Anything I wasn't smart enough to ask about, but you'd like to talk a little bit about?
No, I wanted to thank you for hosting this, but also Wendy, you know, it's very cool. You know, at FourKites, we're a product-driven company, and it's very important for us that anything we build along with a customer, because we wanted to be able to solve, you know, their pain points and something that's reusable for multiple customers. And Orvis has been a phenomenal partner that started with us back in 2021 as we were thinking through, you know, order visibility. And it's interesting because the year after that, order visibility one was one of the most asked, kind of requested features, and so you know, we'll continue to build it. And it's an exciting journey because you know, shipment visibility, it like kind of limits you to the transportation side of the business. But with something like this, what we're trying to kind of help achieve, in Orvis's case, it was inventory planners and the logistics team. But the customers that use, you know, the divisions or, you know, groups within our customers that tend to use order visibility spans across customer service, sales, you know, procurement, you know, yard DC operators, you know, demand planners, etc. So it's a really cool tool, and I'm excited to talk about it, and so appreciate this time to spend with us.
And Wendy, for you, any final thoughts?
Yeah, you know, during our journey in our continued journey with FourKites, we've been really impressed with their development and engineering, you know, looking at the customer's needs first during their development, and then some of the great ideas that have come out of their roundtable discussions and their follow through. I've been really impressed the last few years working with FourKites and seeing what they brought onto the platform for changes, that we've taken advantage of those changes. And, you know, since I'm the project manager for the FourKites platform for Orvis, you know, I've got a lot of new ideas and things that I feel like we could use, and we haven't yet. So I'm really happy to have been partnered with FourKites, and it really has improved Orvis's visibility into our supply chain across all channels.
I'd like to thank both of you, Wendy, for sharing your experience and being willing to educate a wider community, and Trip for providing your insights as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.